we've been very closely involved in the UK IGF process right from the beginning. I think one of the key things that we have found in the UK, and Alan touched on this in his intervention, was the catalytic role that parliamentarian engagement has given to the UK IGF initiative. And I think a lot of that actually comes from the identification of issues and the improving proximity to the things that individuals, the citizens of the country, really care about. And that has really, I think, helped drive the agenda in the UK of identifying, what are the concerns. In Rio last year, a lot of the focus from the UK delegation was on child protection, and it was on crime. And that was very largely because these were the things that were driving the politicians, the parliamentarians at the local level. And then finally, to answer the question that you posed, Gerardo, certainly for the European initiative, there were European parliamentarians engaged in that process. I think there were two who turned up and were involved at various parts of the day. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, we have. Yes, thank you. Could you identify yourself? Thanks.
Okay. My name is Mwende Njiraini from the Communications Commission of Kenya. And I just wanted to add that in Kenya and in East Africa, basically, we had an East African Internet Governance Forum, which was held in early November. What was interesting about it is that it was led by the civil society rather than the government. Though the government was supportive through the Ministry of Information and Communications as well as the regulator. Parliamentarians have really not been involved possibly because they do not see the significance of internet in terms of their leadership role at a local level. So my question would be, I guess you have already mentioned the two issues identified in the UK, that is child protection and crime, but how really can we engage our parliamentarians to be involved in internet issues? Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments? We have one on the, yes. Right. I have to take this is going to be the last comment because we are short on time. Please. It's coming the second microphone.
My name is Deirdre Williams. I come from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. I'm here thanks to the ITU and the Diplo Foundation. I would like to second what the previous speaker said. When I knew that I had been invited to come here, I contacted various people in St. Lucia, and I have been invited by the e-government unit. They are going to try to make an arrangement for me to make a presentation to the government of St. Lucia when I go back to tell them about what I learned. And I would be very grateful to be given plenty of things to tell them to garner their enthusiasm, because as in Kenya, the enthusiasm comes from civil society rather than from government. Our previous Prime Minister said, "Computer la kapale Creole." The computer can't speak Creole. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be brief because I realise the time. I said earlier I'm Welsh, and I think there's a danger that the computer doesn't speak Welsh either, but if we both share English, we'll get by. I agree with Gerardo with the points that you made, and I'll just respond to the questions that you posed. International level, sustained engagement is the big issue. Just people coming in and out is not enough. It needs to be a sustained engagement over time, and that will take a lot of effort. But I think that depends on doing things at a national level so that we have a sustainable element to bring into the international level. Let me put it this way. The tendency of people is to identify that something is wrong. If there's misuse of the internet, or if there are people rowing in the street, or there's litter, the tendency is to say there ought to be a law against it. And you go and pass a law. We have something in the UK called the Dangerous Dogs Act, which is completely ineffective, but it was passed because a child was bitten by a dog. It doesn't do any good. My worry is that we end up with the Dangerous Computers Act that prohibits a lot of things but doesn't actually do anything very constructive. And that's why we felt it so important to get engaged in doing things that are proactive, which are not legislation, and actually also take the pressure off government to an extent. Governments feel under pressure to do things, to pass legislation. And therefore having parliamentarians saying to them, no, it's another sort of engagement that you need, is actually quite a powerful way of endorsing a more cooperative approach. So the oversight of government, you're absolutely right. The oversight of government in making sure that the government does what its international obligations are, that it cooperates in relation to the prevention of crime and the pursuit of offenders and things like that. That's all absolutely crucial, and it is part of our job as parliamentarians. But it's also our part of our job as parliamentarians, I think, to say we don't want you just to be focused on what's happening within the UK. We want you to be a part of a coalition of the willing to do the things that will actually make a real difference. The UK IGF is only very much a baby taking its first steps and falling down every now and then. I wouldn't want to exaggerate how far we have got. But the fact that we are trying to develop this model, I think, is the important thing. And the more that it's reflected by initiatives in other countries, and we're encouraged to see the way that's happening, and particularly the East African initiative, which I've heard about, which seems to be one of the most encouraging developments. And the fact that it's led by civil society isn't necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps we can encourage our parliamentary colleagues through the Commonwealth contacts that we have to see it as something important for them to be involved in too. See, I think we need to develop a methodology for engagement. It's not the way we normally do things. Parliamentarians do parliamentary things, civil society do their things, governments do what governments do. The idea that we work together on something is actually quite threatening to people in many of the traditional institutions, including the international ones sometimes. I think people getting together, doing things, representing their field, quite challenging stuff. But I do believe that the parliamentarians are in the principles of the original agreement by implication, because of the need for civil society to be engaged. I think I would point to the one example of good practice that has been tremendously powerful, which is the work which was driven actually by, more than anything else, by civil society, by the children's charities, and John will be, I think, saying something about this later. That was powerful because it was a pressure to do something about child abuse online. Parliamentarians, instead of wanting to pass private members' bills and things like that, supported that approach. Government, including law enforcement, supported that approach rather than trying to find a more nominal way of doing it. Police engagement is absolutely crucial. But that reduction, I think the figures are something from 16% of child abuse sites being hosted in the UK to less than 0.01%, demonstrates what can be done by a powerful partnership. Now, it's easy to say child abuse is wrong. It's more difficult to identify the other things that need to be dealt with and regulated, particularly those things that are very close to the cutting edge of business activity. But the fact that it's difficult means that it will take time, but it also means that it's all the more important to engage with it. The salutary lesson about the Internet Watch Foundation and that development is that it took about 10 years from the start to getting it properly into place. But as I say, John may say about that, more about that later. At a Chatham House conference just a few weeks ago, there was a considerable engagement from African countries, coming back to the point made from Kenya, of people which included government and NGO representation and business representation, where we were talking about the potential of the internet for development and the importance of this cooperative approach to promoting that, as well as the negatives of dealing with criminal activity and things like that online. So I do believe that different models led by, it may be led by a government in one case, it may be led by civil society, it may be led by parliamentarians. The development of these different models across the world are the thing that will show the right way for engagement with the IGF process. But I come to the conclusion, I think we need to get engagement in the IGF into the mainstream thinking of parliamentarians. That means in national parliaments, and perhaps challenges from civil society will be one way of helping that process, and using the mechanisms of things like the IPU and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, we've already started discussions with the British group of the IPU to say, it's perhaps our fault that it isn't part of your mainstream agenda. Can we talk to you about how it could become that? Perhaps if all of us promote that idea, we will get somewhere.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. I would like now to ask the next panelist to come here, and my colleague of the ITU, Marco Biso, to come and replace me on chairing the next session. Thank you very much.